The end of another long week is here. That means it's time for the Left of Lansing Friday Short with Pat Johnston.
Here's the Friday Short for January 30th of 2026. During this week's show featuring good friend and progressive activist, organizer, and pro-freedom protester Julia Pulver, I devoted about a minute talking about former Detroit City Mayor and current independent gubernatorial candidate Mike Duggan and his decision to dig deep into MAGA pockets for campaign donations, but also to dig deep into the anti-freedom, pro-corruption, and pro-hate MAGA playbook. Now, as the Trump regime deploys its ICE Gestapo to attack undocumented citizens, or those who look undocumented, not white people, and is beating up and killing anyone who gets in the Gestapo's way, including those practicing their First and Second Amendment rights, it's a good time to remind everyone how, as Detroit's mayor last year, Mike Duggan proudly boasted the city would work hand-in-hand with the ICE Gestapo. Now, during a speech at the corporatist group known as the Detroit Regional Chamber's Policy Conference last year, Duggan is quoted as saying, "If you are in this country illegally, we should not be shielding you from ICE and federal enforcement, and the city of Detroit does not." Duggan then pounded his chest by declaring Detroit is not a sanctuary city. Oh, Mike Duggan also referred to undocumented citizens as illegals during that speech. Very, very MAGA-like. Now, there was a time Mike Duggan acted like someone who actually cared about democracy, rule of law, and who also acted like he was against Dear Leaders' acts during Term 1. But once Term 2 began last year, Mike Duggan, knowing he was running for governor, not as a Democrat, but as a so-called independent, put his arm around the Trump regime's authoritarian goals. He started sounding more MAGA, and as the Detroit Metro Times' Steve Nieveling reported last summer, Duggan is disproportionately attacking Democrats more than he spends time worrying about the white supremacist MAGA movement. Now, don't get me wrong, I do plenty of criticisms of Michigan and national Democratic leaders on the show, because, I have a brain. And I'm not saying attacking Democrats based on legitimate concerns and weakness is wrong, not at all. But that's not what Mike Duggan is doing here. Consider how at this year's Detroit Regional Chamber Conference that took place this week, Mike Duggan said that state Democrats would not vote on a school funding package without passing a bill allowing transgender athletes to compete in school sports. Now, here's the problem, though. No such bill ever existed, Mike. And I'll repeat this again. We had a total of 2 trans girls playing high school sports in the state last year, 2. But when it comes down to adopting the MAGA hate-filled rhetoric on the trans community, Mike Duggan is more than happy to do it. Because he's not about fighting for those who don't have a voice. And it's not surprising considering he's getting backed by some strong MAGA donor money. Again, thanks to excellent reporting by Steve Nieveling in another expose on Duggan last summer on the Detroit Metro Times. Some of those donors are people who are all about pushing a pro-corporate, authoritarian, anti-working class, and pro-white supremacy agenda. That's the truth. But Mike Duggan's son, who is his dad's campaign manager, no nepotism there, of course, I'm sure he really earned it, said, quote, "We're proud to have the support of both Republicans and Democrats who want to fix the system and break the two-party death grip in Lansing." Now, notice that he didn't mention the corporate death grip in Lansing because that is the real problem plaguing Lansing. No, he'll be a part of it. Now, according to Steve Nieveling's piece on MAGA donors flooding cash into Duggan's campaign, Duggan received the maximum donation from J.C. Huizenga, chair of the Huizenga Group and founder of the National Heritage Academies, a for-profit charter school chain. Oh, how nice of Duggan to accept donations from a corrupt for-profit chain movement at the expense of public schools. And I should bring up how last decade the Detroit Free Press reported on how J.C. Huizenga's company owns most of these school buildings, while also collecting taxpayer money to pay for desks, books, computers, and whatever else is inside those schools. So Huizenga is using taxpayer money for his schools where oversight is also lacking. Just a reminder here as well that as Michigan MAGA Republicans claim to fight against so-called fraud in the state's child care programs, they're currently blocking money right now devoted to providing oversight on these for-profit schools. How convenient. I guess Mike Duggan, though, supports that since he's accepting money from these same MAGA people. Which illustrates that Mike Duggan is more than pleased to work with oligarch political donors who believe in the Trump regime's authoritarianism. And they want that same kind of corporate authoritarianism and government corruption to run inside Lansing, or actually continue it. You think Mike Duggan will represent the people? He'll represent working class Michiganders over these MAGA billionaires? You really believe that? Now, after the ICE Gestapo murdered Minnesotan nurse Alex Preddy by firing 10 or so shots into his body, since the first 9, I guess, weren't enough, Duggan released a statement saying, "This isn't about left or right, it's about right and wrong." What a pathetic, weak, and low-energy response from a so-called leader. Notice he didn't call for an abolishment of ICE or even call for some kinds of reforms on ICE, to say the least. But also notice how he added that little "this isn't about left or right" statement. You see, Mike Duggan is signaling that the left is somehow to blame for Preddy's murder, as fascism from the right-wing Trump regime and MAGA Republican Party is taking a stranglehold across the country. That signals to me that Mike Duggan is choosing to work and side with fascism. Just thought I'd offer that little reminder. leftoflansing@gmail.com is the best way to reach me. Follow me on Blue Sky, Facebook, the Gram, and Twitter. Subscribe to the show on the YouTube, and subscribe and give a good 5-star review of Michigan's premier progressive podcast. Take the battle to them.